Okay, so we're back with another Remember When episode. I'll get to that later on in the video, but as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Episode 8, so if you haven't seen it, you know the drill by now, so let's get to it. So it opens with a sexy Romulan battle and the ship's being boarded, and I've said this in a few Star Trek videos before, but this is one of my favourite Star Trek tropes when the ship gets invaded. And yeah, we don't get a lot of it here, but you know, I kind of liked it. And they want something from the ship, and I thought for a minute we were going to get a flashback leading up to these events. But the USS Wayfinder, a Sovereign-class starship commanded by Boimler's transporter clone, or a mirror version of Boimler, or no, it's just Boimler, and it turns out this is all a holo program. So this got me wondering, after I seen this in the first few seconds, is this how they're going to do the Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks crossover? Because there's a few indications to that. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'll get to that later on in the video. And like and subscribe, by the way. So anyway, yeah, it's just the gang relaxing. And the Romulans are after a device in the holo program that's been developed to fold time called Chronic Gamma. And I know this is just part of a Lower Decks holo program, but man, that's something that they're probably going to use in Picard Season 3 when you think about it, isn't it? Isn't it? Because if you've seen that, then you know. Anyway, so these guys are playing Star Trek online, or I just suppose online for them. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, the setup is sort of, hey, remember we've done this before? And it's a bit like the most recent season of the Orville, which stuck heavily to that format, which, by the way, I've done a whole heap of videos on, so check them out. And they also done this last week in Lower Decks, bringing back Peanut Hamper, so is this going to be a continual theme, or at least a recurring theme that we're going to see in the show going forward? I don't know. But yeah, I loved the Rafa Khan intro to the game, and the theme mixed with the Lower Decks theme really worked. So it's a Rafa Khan time travel multiverse spin. So yeah, is this the way that they're going to set up the Strange New Worlds crossover? Because if not, what's the point of this? The crew are just relaxing, playing a sort of holo novel or holo game. Mariner even points out that it doesn't really mean anything in the episode.
We just spent like an hour getting the backstory of your MacGuffin, and now we're not going after it?
And this episode sort of is a little bit all over the place. It does get a little bit Star Wars-y. I mean, come on, you knew I was going to say that. At least some of these bikes definitely look like the speeders from Star Wars, and they also look like the ones from Discovery Season 5 trailer as well. Do you think I'm right about that, or is that just a coincidence? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But yeah, it all gets a bit time travel-y in the holodeck, and they're in the past to prevent a thing, etc, etc. You know where this is going, and this episode is suffering from a lack of punch that it's been going through at Lower Decks Season 3, at least in my opinion. None of the jokes really land or work. I'm not saying that's the case for every single joke or gag in here, but the majority for sure. And the weird thing is, this episode is doing exactly what I've said I wanted it to do and be more out there and do its own thing. But I suppose you've got to have a bit of quality behind that if you're going to do it. I mean, last week's episode, I enjoyed it a lot more than this week's, and it was a lot more self-indulgent. But yeah, they sort of do nothing with it. Tendi and Rutherford are ignored like a disco ensign. Until near the end of the episode, Tendi has a mini breakdown out of nowhere, and I didn't see this coming. There was no foreshadowing or build-up for it. Mariner wants it all to end so she can go to a meeting, and Boimler just wants to play the game. Now, there's a little bit of a twist in this episode, or a few of them. I'll get to the ending later on. We find out that William, Boimler's clone, I mentioned him at the start of the video, has died in a transporter accident. So this is him sort of having his own sort of escapism, I suppose. But man, it took a long slog to get to that point in this episode. And the clone's definitely not dead. They're going to do a sort of evil Morty thing, because it's Mike McMahon and Rick and Morty. They done Bird People last week. I mean, come on, man. So yeah, the rest of the episode for Boimler after this, he goes on a sort of side quest to discover what the number 42 means. It's a great little nod to the rock monsters that were supposed to be at the end of Star Trek 5. But yeah, they done sort of face thing with the guy, it didn't look as good. But that's what was supposed to be at the end of Star Trek 5, or roughly, if you didn't know that. And the number 42 thing, that's just a Hitchhiker's Guide reference. I mean, read a book after you've liked and subscribed to this channel, and then, you know, go and read the Hitchhiker's Guide if you want to do that. Or watch the film. I like the film. Doesn't matter. But yeah, all the time travel stuff in this episode doesn't mean anything. I honestly don't think this is leading to anything other than setting up the Strange New Worlds crossover, which, come on, how is this not a setup for that? I'm not saying they're going to do it exactly the way, but all the parts are there for this to work. We've got time travel, we've got them meeting members of the crew, we've got them going on missions. This has to be the setup for it, surely. And there's one thing that I've not mentioned in this episode so far, and that is old crew members Sulu. And yes, that's Sulu, voiced by George Takei, however you want to say it. And it never occurred to me in a million years that they'd ever bring him back for Lower Decks. So is this how they're going to set up the Strange New Worlds crossover? But yeah, for me, this was a standout in a very dull episode. And it wasn't even a particularly great moment, because it sort of done the bait and switch with Kirk, which I wouldn't have minded if it was Kirk, and it's very telling that George Takei, or again George Takei, has appeared in Lower Decks before Shatner, because, you know, Shatner's not the easiest guy to get along with if you believe the rumours. But yeah, in conclusion, an okay episode, but certainly not a great one. If this episode is setting up the evil Boimler clone in the Strange New Worlds crossover, it's sort of a waste of an episode, and with the quality of the season so far, I don't think the show can keep affording to do stuff like this. Last week's episode really seemed to divide fans, and I was expecting that. And I don't know how this episode is going to improve in a lot of people's opinions, to be honest. If you did enjoy this episode for the story or all the references, that's absolutely great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But this really felt like a slog to watch to me, and it just seemed like a whole bunch of ideas thrown together. There was too much going on and not enough at the same time. And none of this really pushed anything forward for me, at least until the end, because as I mentioned earlier on in the video, and I figured this even when I was watching this episode, William the clone will be back, and he is before the end of the episode, because you can't not have a clone and not do an evil clone. And he's with Section 31, and I did like how they take the piss out of the secret organisation that everyone knows about, and the combat and stuff like that. But yeah, that was it. I just wonder, after 4 seasons of this show, is this a setup for the Strange New Worlds crossover? And I know it felt like I left a lot of the references out in this, but if you're a fan, you'll get them already. But let me know what you think of this episode of Lower Decks and the season so far. And genuinely, seriously, do you think this is how they're sort of going to utilise or explain the Strange New Worlds crossover? Let me know what you think in the comments below, or you can follow me on Twitter at TheGeeksReviews. If you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's only just a click away. My name's Al, thanks for watching.